Have you ever committed just a ridiculous amount of time to a piece of media and then you just felt completely trapped by it?
Oh, absolutely.
Hmm.
More times than I'd like to admit.
Right. You know the exact feeling I'm talking about. You start watching a show or reading some massive fantasy series or following this huge online narrative. And at first, it's like pure magic.
Yeah, it's a total escape.
Exactly. You learn the lore, you fall in love with the characters, you memorize the maps. But then somewhere along the line, the tectonic plates of the story they start to shift.
The quality drops off a cliff.
A total cliff. The characters you thought you knew start making decisions that just baffle you. The world building turns into this chaotic mess of contradictions, but you stay.
Because of the investment.
Right. You stay because you've already invested months or maybe years of your finite life into this universe. You keep thinking, well, it has to get better, right? They're just setting up a massive redemption arc.
The payoff is coming.
The payoff is coming, but it never does.
And yet, it never materializes.
Mm.
It is a universally agonizing experience, and one that really taps into a very specific psychological vulnerability.
Oh, 100%.
We tie our own emotional well-being to the hope of a fictional resolution that the creators are either unwilling or honestly just unable to provide.
Right.
It becomes this hostage situation where you are both the hostage and the one holding the key, but you refuse to unlock the door because walking away means admitting that the time you spent is just gone forever.
That is exactly it. You are held captive by the sunk cost fallacy of your own dedication. And today, for our deep dive, our mission is to pull apart a narrative that represents the absolute apex of this phenomenon.
A truly staggering example.
We are exploring the unadulterated narrative chaos of the Super Hedgehog Bros universe.
Yes.
But we aren't just looking at this from a safe, detached distance. Today, we have unprecedented access to the mind of a man who lived in the trenches of this chaotic universe for over 2.5 years.
Over 800 days.
800 days. We're looking at this through the eyes of a dedicated and ultimately just broken content creator named Bugsy.
Also known to his audience as Bugsy No Name.
Right, and I have to tell you, reading through his materials, just stepping into Bugsy's world, I felt his pain in my bones. It broke me a little bit, too.
I share that sentiment completely. The sheer volume of frustration in the materials we reviewed is palpable. I mean, we are analyzing a massive stack of Bugsy's personal written critiques here.
Huge stack.
Things like his essays titled Critique of the Super Hedgehog Bros Narrative Chaos and Shattered Glass and Sonic Manifestos.
Which are brilliant, by the way.
Very analytical. And that's alongside a highly detailed document breaking down his own creative framing device called the Middleman in Stagnant. But the most chilling and frankly illuminating source we have is the raw, glitch-ridden transcript of his final YouTube video send-off.
Yeah, that transcript is haunting.
It is essentially his resignation letter to a universe that consumed over 800 days of his creative life.
Just let that sink in for a second. Think about what you were doing 800 days ago.
It's a massive span of time.
Bugsy spent that entire span charting this universe on his YouTube channel, chronicling every bizarre twist, every single character assassination, hoping for growth that never arrived.
And you can hear it in his words.
You really can. Reading his final transcript, you can hear the absolute exhaustion in his voice. You can feel the weight of a man who realized he has been running a marathon on a narrative treadmill that is entirely unplugged from logic.
It's maddening.
I am genuinely outraged on his behalf. I wanted to tear my hair out just reading about what he had to endure.
And that outrage is entirely justified when you begin to examine the mechanics of how this specific universe just dismantled its own foundation.
Totally.
Because the structural decay of any long-running narrative usually begins at the most intimate level. The characters.
Right. Because if you think about the characters you love them because they have a core identity, they have agency, and the Super Hedgehog Bros universe doesn't just change its core cast, it fundamentally breaks them. It shatters them into these unrecognizable, unlikable pieces and expects the audience to just nod and accept it.
Yes, to swallow it whole.
So let's start with the blue blur himself, Sonic. When you think of Sonic, what comes to mind?
Well, traditionally, Sonic is defined by his kinetic energy, his unwavering confidence, his loyalty, and his highly active role as a hero.
Right, he's a hero.
He might be impulsive and he might be cocky, but he cares deeply about his friends. He is the anchor.
Always.
In the Super Hedgehog Bros universe, however, that anchor is completely severed. He is portrayed as a profoundly thoughtless, almost cowardly individual.
Thoughtless is putting it incredibly mildly. We are talking about a guy who breaks up with a girl named Percy over a text message. A text message.
A truly baffling choice for that character.
He doesn't even have the courage to look her in the eye. And what makes this so baffling, and Bugsy points this out with immense frustration, is that Percy genuinely cared about him.
She was invested.
Yeah. She showed a rare moment of actual vulnerability and anger before flipping back to her laid-back persona. She gave him real emotion, and Sonic just cowardly texts her. I'm struggling to understand the psychology here.
It's an odd creative decision.
Is this the writer trying to make him, relatable by giving him modern, mundane dating flaws?
That is precisely the trap amateur writers fall into.
Yeah.
Attempting to map modern, mundane, cowardly behaviors onto a hyperkinetic hero creates a fundamental character friction.
It just doesn't fit.
It's a complete subversion of the hero archetype, but not in a clever or deconstructive way. When a character like Sonic, whose entire ethos is built on moving forward and confronting obstacles head-on, suddenly cowers behind a digital screen to avoid an emotional confrontation.
Right, he literally runs away.
Exactly. The audience loses faith in his agency. It is petty.
It is so petty. And his obliviousness doesn't just stop at his romantic life, it extends to his closest friends. Sonic completely ignores Tails' downward spirals.
He's entirely absent.
Tails is out there struggling deeply with his social life, which we will absolutely get into later, and Sonic is just in his own little world, completely disconnected from the emotional reality of his supposed best friend.
Which is a catastrophic failure of the established dynamic. A hero who lacks empathy for his inner circle ceases to function as a hero.
Yeah, what's the point of him?
If Sonic cannot recognize the pain of the person who has flown his plane and watched his back for decades, his heroics ring entirely hollow.
It's infuriating. But if Sonic's treatment is bad, the way this universe handles Amy Rose is a masterclass in how to obliterate a strong female character.
Oh, the regression of Amy is stunning.
Amy is iconic for her giant hammer, her fearlessness, her absolute spine. She stands up to gods and monsters in the original lore. But in this universe,
she loses all of that.
She is completely stripped of her nerve when it actually matters. She cowers around bullies like Rouge and Shadow. She shrinks. But does she put the hammer away? Oh, no.
No, she redirects that energy.
Instead, she goes on physical rampages, hitting innocent men who have absolutely nothing to do with her emotional breakdowns.
The displacement of aggression here is truly staggering. She doesn't confront the people actually causing her pain.
Never.
Instead, she unleashes physical violence on completely unrelated bystanders. From a psychological standpoint, this is severe emotional regression.
Exactly. Let's talk about Dexter. Dexter is a guy she is dating, and she treats him like a literal child. She basically uses him as a prop, a placeholder to occupy her time until Sonic comes back around.
That's deeply toxic.
She demeans him. So Dexter eventually wises up and ditches her for Sonic's sister, Sonia, who is someone who actually treats him like a grown man. And how does Amy react to this blow to her ego and her own emotional turmoil?
She destroys a city.
She destroys a city.
The escalation is absurd, yet entirely indicative of a narrative that uses destruction as a substitute for emotional processing.
She doesn't just destroy a city. She pummels the absolute daylights out of Manic. Now, listener, I have to give you a tiny bit of context just so you understand how ridiculous this is.
Please do.
Manic was involved in this entirely confusing subplot where everyone thought Scourge's illegitimate kids were his. It was a whole mess. But Amy beats Manic, destroys the city infrastructure, and inevitably ends up in a jail cell.
As one would after leveling a city block.
Right. And what does this fearless, hammer-wielding hero do in her jail cell?
According to Bugsy's extensive notes, she sits in the jail cell crying for her mother.
Crying for her mom.
She shows absolutely zero comprehension of why her actions were wrong. She is a woman in her early 20s acting with the emotional permanence of a toddler.
I can't wrap my head around it. What is the narrative utility of having her cower in front of bullies, beat up innocent people, and then cry for her mom in jail? Are they trying to make her seem fragile?
I suspect it is a misunderstanding of how to write vulnerability.
Yeah.
The writers likely believe that physical outbursts, followed by infantile weeping, creates depth. In reality, it simply alienates the audience.
It makes you hate her.
It strips the character of her dignity. When writers cannot organically generate conflict through character motivations, they resort to character assassination.
Right.
They force the characters into uncharacteristic, often abhorrent behaviors, simply to move the plot from point A to point B.
And it is an insult to the time a fan has invested. Bugsy knows Amy Rose better than the people currently writing her.
Clearly.
But listen, as angry as Bugsy was about Amy, his absolute peak frustration when it comes to character aggression was directed at Rouge the Bat.
Rouge is perhaps the most egregious example of a character being hollowed out.
Totally hollowed out.
In the established games and media, Rouge is a master thief, a spy, a double agent. But she famously has a heart of gold.
Right, she has a conscience.
She is complex. She does the wrong things for the right reasons. Here, Bugsy explicitly notes that she is stripped of that heart entirely and turned into an absolute nightmare of a person.
He is just mean. It's like the writers just actively hated Rouge and wanted to punish her. Like she constantly invites herself to other people's events just to cause drama.
She thrives on it.
She crashes a vacation Amy was having, and what does she do? She manipulates Shadow into dogpiling on Amy and berating her. But the absolute lowest point, the moment that made Bugsy want to scream into the void, is what she does at Knuckles and Julie Sue's wedding.
To set the scene, Julie Sue is pregnant. It is supposed to be the happiest day of her life, her wedding day.
Right.
And Rouge decides this is the perfect, most opportune moment to start screaming at Shadow, shoving all of their past baggage back at his face, completely ruining the event.
And wait, listener, you have to understand the context for Shadow in that exact moment. Shadow had just been shot by a Chow.
Yes, the Chow incident.
Now, if you aren't deep into the lore, a Chow is essentially a tiny, adorable, teardrop-shaped creature that usually just floats around looking cute. Imagine being violently assaulted by a heavily armed Pokemon.
That's a very apt comparison.
That is what just happened to Shadow. He is physically vulnerable. He has just been shot. He is in the middle of proposing to Rouge because he has this twisted logic that they are both bad people and that's why they work.
Right.
And Rouge just starts screaming at him in the vicinity of a pregnant bride. It's absolute madness.
It is soap opera theatrics completely divorced from character logic.
Yeah.
And her toxicity escalates to actual lethality later on.
Oh, God, yeah.
Later in the narrative, she manipulates Shadow into nearly killing a female Eggman worker.
Just a random worker.
This is a grown woman, referred to in the lore as a child of the moon. Shadow is just out there acting as a hitman at Rouge's behest, shooting people. And the military organization GUN is totally fine with it.
Wait, hold on. The Guardian Units of Nations, the global military force, they just sanction random murders by a rogue hedgehog because his bat girlfriend told him to do it.
Which is a profound misunderstanding of the lore on the writer's part. Bugsy rightly points out that while GUN has a very dark history, specifically regarding the Maria incident, where they raided the space colony ARK and tragically killed a young girl named Maria.
Right, heavy stuff.
Yes, they are a structured military force. They aren't an anarchic syndicate that just sanctions random street executions by Shadow.
It's like finding out the biography of Abraham Lincoln was actually written and published by Jefferson Davis.
Exactly.
The bias against the characters is so inherently skewed that the text just eats itself alive. Why do writers strip characters of their agency and their core traits just to manufacture cheap drama?
Because it is easy.
Is it really just laziness?
True character development requires patience, empathy, and an understanding of cause and effect. It is much easier to just have Rouge scream at a wedding than to write a nuanced conversation about her fear of commitment.
Wow, yeah.
But for a dedicated fan like Bugsy, this isn't just bad writing, it's a betrayal.
You can feel his exhaustion bleeding through the transcripts. He literally says every character is either ineffectual or an absolute jerk for no reason.
They're all broken.
But here is the thing that truly blew my mind. These character assassinations, they are bad. They are franchise ruining. But they're just the appetizer when you look at the sheer, unadulterated chaos of the world building itself.
Indeed, because you cannot put shattered characters into a stable universe.
No.
The world itself has to break to accommodate their irrationality. And the environmental context these broken characters exist within is just as shattered as they are.
If you think the characters are broken, wait until you see the world they are forced to inhabit. Listener, I want you to imagine the Super Hedgehog Bros universe as a giant industrial blender.
An apt metaphor.
The writers are just standing over it, grabbing action figures from completely different toy aisles, throwing them in, and hitting the pulverize button. First up in this chaotic smoothie, we have a random, inexplicable portal to the Naruto universe.
Yes, and not just a subtle nod or an Easter egg. The narrative explicitly features Mobian, meaning the anthropomorphic animal-like species of the Sonic universe.
Right, the furry versions.
Yeah. Exactly. Mobian versions of the characters Deidara and Tobi from the anime Naruto Shippuden.
Bugsy describes watching this one episode where Tails and Amy just have a casual, quick chat with Moby and Daidara and Toby through a portal. And Daidara is still alive in this context, which implies to anyone who knows anime that this is pre-Ninja War.
The timeline implications are dizzying.
And Bugsy is just sitting there at his desk, head in his hands, thinking, what on earth is going on? It sent him down an analytical rabbit hole he desperately did not want to go down.
I don't blame him.
Who can blame him? Why are we mapping anime timeline logistics onto a show about a blue hedgehog? But wait, that's just the anime side. Let's talk about the Star Wars crossover, because this one broke my brain.
Yes. The introduction of the character named Obi-Wan Coyote.
Obi-Wan Coyote. Now, you hear that name, you think of a wise, noble Jedi Master who maybe happens to look like a coyote, but no.
Not at all.
In this universe, Obi-Wan Coyote's sole defining narrative trait is not the Force, it is not lightsaber combat, it is not intergalactic diplomacy. His defining trait is being an absolute connoisseur of older women.
It is deeply bizarre.
He is explicitly a MILF hunter, and his primary target, Tails' mom, Rosemary.
It is absurd on its face, but let's analyze the mechanism of why this happens in amateur writing.
Please, make it make sense.
This is a classic phenomenon where the author's internal, unrelated fixations hijack established iconography.
But why use Obi-Wan? Why not just create a new character who happens to be a coyote that hits on Tails' mom? Why drag the Jedi Order into this?
Because building a new character requires establishing emotional capital with the audience. The writer lacks the skill to make you care about a random coyote. Stealing a recognizable name like Obi-Wan is a shortcut. It borrows the cultural weight of Star Wars, but then abruptly subverts it to act out a highly specific and frankly jarring personal fantasy of the writer.
It's just so weird.
The lightsaber isn't a tool of a Jedi here. It's just a prop for a completely different kind of character archetype.
It is pop culture whiplash.
Yeah.
Because you don't just have Naruto and Star Wars. The pop singer Sabrina Carpenter, the real-world, actual human pop singer, canonically exists in this alternate Mobius.
Just dropped right in there.
And then we have the Batman Supervillain Club.
This is a particularly glaring logical failure that really highlights the lack of an editorial filter.
Yes.
In this universe, Rouge runs an underground club that is located beneath a regular club. And this underground club is exclusively for Batman supervillains.
But Batman doesn't even exist in this universe. Bugsy asks the ultimate, most painfully obvious question. What do you get when you have a bunch of Batman villains in a Sonic universe where there is no Batman?
You get absolutely no point.
You get no point. The Joker without Batman is just a guy with bad makeup making terrible jokes. It's just throwing intellectual properties at a wall. And then there's Zoe, a character who is inexplicably obsessed with the DreamWorks version of Puss in Boots.
And Bugsy is specifically fixated on the confusing age dynamics of Puss in Boots within this context.
Right.
He spends time wondering if the cat is supposed to be 30, 40, or 50 years old in cat years versus human years, and why Zoe, a young character, is so romantically or hyperfixated on him.
It's gross.
It's a bizarre hyperfixation within the narrative that only serves to alienate the audience.
I am genuinely struggling to understand the goal here. When a writer throws Batman villains, koala slavery in the Sol dimension, which we will barely touch on because Bugsy notes it's just dragging in Archie comic lore for no reason.
It's overly complicated.
Sabrina Carpenter and Naruto portals all into the same pot. What is the actual narrative goal? Are they trying to build a multiverse, or is this just a total lack of an editorial filter? Doesn't the wall just collapse under the weight of it all?
It absolutely collapses. Throwing random intellectual properties into a story doesn't create a multiverse. It creates a junk drawer.
A junk drawer?
A true multiverse, think of the Spider-Verse or well-constructed comic continuities, has rules. It has parallel structures, thematic resonance, and a central thesis that binds the disparate elements together.
Right. There's a reason for it.
This universe has none of that. This is simply the writer emptying their subconscious onto the page, treating the narrative canvas like a dumping ground for whatever media they consumed that weekend.
A junk drawer is the perfect analogy. You are reaching in for a pen and you pull out a rusted battery, a Batman villain, and Sabrina Carpenter. It's useless.
Exactly.
But all of this, the Naruto portals, the MILF hunting Jedi, all of this pales in comparison to the absolute foundational structural flaw that Bugsy identifies. This is where Bugsy's critical thinking truly shines, and it blew my mind.
You are referring to what he terms the Eggman paradox.
Yes, the Eggman paradox. Listener, listen closely to this logic because it's brilliant. In this Super Hedgehog Bros universe, the writers needed a canon explanation for the actual real-world Sega Sonic video games.
They wanted a meta reason for them to exist.
Right. They wanted to distance themselves from the official games to say, our universe is the real one. So, the universe claims that the events of the video games are not the true events. They are simply exaggerated, fictionalized stories being sold to the public by Dr. Eggman.
On the surface, it is intended as a meta-joke, a clever wink to the audience.
Sure.
But Bugsy astutely unpacks the massive logistical and psychological nightmare this creates for the world building.
Right. Bugsy looks at this and says, okay, if the games exist as physical media in this universe, that means the company Sega must exist to develop and publish them.
Naturally.
And if Sega published the life story of Sonic through all these games spanning decades, that means Sega as a corporate entity survived all the way through the Dreamcast era into the modern console era, all within this fictional universe.
It is a brilliant deduction that highlights how writers rarely think through the economic or infrastructural implications of their meta-jokes.
Yeah.
But the psychological contradiction is even more profound and fatal to the story.
Exactly. Let's think about Dr. Eggman for 1 second. Dr. Eggman is a man defined by his megalomania. He has a massive, incredibly fragile ego.
He builds giant robots with his own face on them.
With his own face. Why on earth would a man like that voluntarily sell stories where Sonic is the hero? Why would Eggman publish narratives where he gets defeated, humiliated, and his bases get blown up time and time again? It goes against his entire psychological profile.
It is a complete paradox. If Eggman were the author of the authorized biographies of Mobius, he would frame himself as the valiant, misunderstood savior of a chaotic world.
Of course he would.
And Sonic would be framed as an anarchic blue menace destroying progress.
Exactly. He would write propaganda. He wouldn't write Sonic Adventure 2.
No, you wouldn't.
Bugsy realized that if you think about this premise for more than 5 minutes, it breaks the universe hardcore. If the foundational premise of your universe relies on a character acting completely counter to their established psychology, the entire structure is built on sand.
It crumbles instantly.
It's not a clever wink to the fans, it's a middle finger disguised as a clever wink.
And this is exactly why Bugsy was so exhausted. He was bringing a level of critical rigor and structural analysis to a text that fundamentally rejected logic.
It is so frustrating. The world is a complete mess. It's a junk drawer of IPs and broken logic.
Yes.
But, I kept thinking as I read Bugsy's notes, if the characters at least treated each other well, if they had genuine affection and communication, maybe you could forgive a Batman villain club.
You might be able to overlook it.
Maybe you could look past the Eggman paradox. But the way these characters interact within this broken world, especially romantically, is where Bugsy truly lost his mind.
Which brings us to the interpersonal dynamics. The writers attempted to inject mature, serialized drama into the narrative, but without the necessary emotional intelligence to execute it.
It is a soap opera of misunderstandings. I am telling you, the romantic entanglements in this universe have a Boy Meets World level of contrived misunderstandings, but without any of the charm.
It's all angst, no charm.
Let's look at the triangle between Sonic, Amy, and Blaze the Cat.
It is a study in exhausting, repetitive narrative loops.
Right.
Amy, despite her established, fiercely loyal devotion to Sonic, falls for rumors that Sonic is cheating on her.
Again and again.
And she doesn't just fall for it once. She falls for it 3 or 4 times over the course of the series.
It's ridiculous.
Someone in the chat, because the universe incorporates live streaming chat, or some random side character just says, hey, Amy, Sonic is cheating, and she immediately, without demanding any evidence, believes it.
Bugsy was literally pulling his hair out on camera. He's screaming in his transcripts, how stupid is she? She's not going to fall for this, and then she does. Why do writers do this?
It's maddening.
Why strip away all trust between characters just for a 5-minute conflict?
Because it is an artificial mechanism to generate immediate tension. Trust and healthy communication resolve conflicts quickly, which is bad for a writer who needs to stretch a storyline across 20 episodes, but lacks the imagination to introduce external, plot-driven stakes.
So they just make everyone act like idiots.
Essentially, yes. They manufacture internal, entirely avoidable misunderstandings.
And it just spirals. When Sonic finally gets dejected by Amy, who, by the way, was weirdly flirting with Sonic while actively dating Dexter, the guy she treated like a child.
The hypocrisy is strong there.
Sonic decides he needs to clear his head, so he leaves and goes to the Sol dimension.
And this is where the plot mechanics become truly bizarre and entirely dictated by the chaotic whims of the audience integration.
Yes, the chat.
Sonic is trying to help Blaze the Cat. Blaze's dimension is currently being invaded by a pirate version of Metal Sonic. It is a dire life-or-death situation.
Super high stakes.
The pirate Metal Sonic literally kills Blaze's mother in front of her. It is a heart-wrenching, deeply traumatic event.
Right. Incredibly heavy stuff. A character just watched her mother get murdered. So what happens next? The chat, the literal live stream chat that the characters can apparently read, dares Sonic to kiss Blaze.
Out of nowhere.
And he does. In the middle of this trauma, Blaze gets mad at first, rightfully so. But later, after she saves Sonic from the Metal Sonic pirate, they kiss again.
Which is just jarring.
Bugsy notes that he thought, great, finally! Sonic can get over Amy's toxic behavior and be a hero in a dimension where people actually need him.
But naturally, the narrative refuses to allow a clean resolution or genuine emotional growth.
Of course not.
Sonic immediately becomes bizarrely possessive over Blaze the moment Silver the Hedgehog shows up.
Silver. Listen, my heart breaks for Silver in this universe. For those who don't know, Silver is a time-traveling hedgehog trying to fix apocalyptic futures.
It's a tragic figure.
In this story, Silver is literally being pulled apart by timeline anomalies. He is fighting the physics of time itself trying to find his way back to Blaze. He actually gets Blaze pregnant, but he doesn't even know because the timeline is violently ripping him away before he can settle down.
The temporal mechanics are brutal for him.
And what does Blaze do? Does she wait for the love of her life who is fighting temporal physics to save reality?
No. She abandons him completely.
Just drops him.
She dumps Silver and decides to marry a character named Basil for, and I quote the transcript directly, safety.
Safety.
She becomes deeply angry at Silver for not coming back, completely ignoring the objective, physical fact that he is trapped in a collapsing timeline and cannot return.
It's not like he went out for milk.
Exactly. She just gives up on him for a guy named Basil because it is easier.
It's agonizing. Nobody talks to each other. Nobody gives anyone the benefit of the doubt. It's just a constant cycle of assuming the absolute worst about the people you supposedly love.
It creates a deeply cynical viewing experience.
But if you think the Sonic, Blaze, and Amy drama is a headache, let's talk about the absolute tragic social life of Tails.
Tails is put through a truly baffling gauntlet of social and romantic humiliations that seem to serve no purpose other than to degrade his character.
It's relentless. First, he's stalked by a chat-created character named Tina who just shows up and claims to be his girlfriend.
Unsettled.
Then he gets maliciously catfished by Zoe, who pretends to be a rabbit online to trick him. Eventually, he tries to legitimately date a rabbit character, but he constantly monologues about society.
The monologues.
Bugsy literally screams in his notes about how much he hates Tails talking about society. You know that feeling when a TV show stops being a story and just becomes a mouthpiece for the writer's personal grievances?
It becomes incredibly preachy.
That's what Bugsy was enduring every single day. If you love someone, just be with them. Stop delivering heavy-handed monologues about how society views your relationship.
The monologuing is a classic symptom of writers trying to inject artificial, unearned philosophical depth into the narrative.
Right.
Instead of showing genuine emotional connection between Tails and his partner, they have the character deliver heavy-handed theatrical speeches about societal judgment.
It's so unnatural.
It is telling rather than showing in the most painful way possible.
And the judgment they are so worried about is everywhere, leading to the most uncomfortable misunderstandings. For instance, Zoe believes that Tails and Cream the rabbit are dating. Tails explicitly tells her they are not.
He denies it.
Cream explicitly tells her they are not. The overarching chat tells her they are not. But Zoe has what Bugsy describes as a thick skull and absolutely refuses to believe the words coming out of their mouths.
It's forced conflict.
And then it hits a crescendo of absolute weirdness. Cream's parents and Tails' parents both bizarrely conclude that Tails, Cream, and Zoe are having an interspecies threesome.
This is a staggering leap of logic for any parent to make, let alone two sets of parents simultaneously without any empirical evidence.
Like, where did they even get that idea?
Bugsy theorizes in his notes that perhaps the parents were overly hormonal teenagers in their own youth and are heavily projecting their own past behaviors and fears onto their sheltered children. But even he admits that trying to apply psychological frameworks to this makes absolutely zero sense. The parents literally pull Cream out of the situation because they genuinely believe she's involved in this bizarre triad.
It's just deeply uncomfortable. Why force these incredibly weird, mature themes onto these characters?
It's tone deaf.
And listener, it is set against a backdrop of these baked-in prejudices in the universe that are genuinely jarring. And I want to be very clear here. We are just the messengers, impartially reporting what Bugsy had to sit through and document.
It's important to state that we are observing the text neutrally.
But there is blatant, systemic Mobian-on-Mobian prejudice woven into the story. Vanilla, who is Cream's mom, portrayed as a strict businesswoman here, absolutely hates foxes.
She has a severe bias.
She tells Tails on Tails Tuesday, the one day he is allowed to play a game with her daughter, that Cream doesn't want to see him, basically blocking their entirely functional friendship simply because she harbors a deep prejudice against foxes.
Furthermore, the universe establishes a pervasive biological racism between Mobians and humans.
Right.
The narrative explicitly states that every single Mobian is inexplicably prejudiced against humans, treating it as a foundational law of their society rather than a nuanced societal flaw to be overcome.
But the absolute strangest, most mind-boggling prejudice in this universe is the racism against Dragon Ball Z science.
Yes, the integration of science, an alien warrior race from an entirely different anime franchise, into the socio-political prejudice hierarchy of the Sonic universe is certainly a choice by the writers.
A completely wild choice. Bugsy dedicates a significant portion of his critique to this because it just broke his immersion completely.
It would break anyone's immersion.
Turles, a Saiyan character, keeps aggressively hitting on Cream. Frieza, the literal galactic space dictator Frieza from Dragon Ball Z, intervenes.
In a Sonic universe. Let that sink in.
According to the source material, this intervention spawns a running gag revolving around a Saiyan Lives Matter chant,
Which is a highly loaded real-world reference.
Bugsy documents how this unfolds, noting his own profound alienation from the narrative, as this specific running gag spirals so far out of control that it culminates in Tails and Cream, two of the most innocent characters in the lore, literally chanting, "Hail Frieza."
Our job here isn't to weigh in on the socio-political implications the author was playing with, but rather to look at how injecting this highly charged, real-world vernacular into a universe about anthropomorphic hedgehogs completely shattered the suspension of disbelief for the viewer.
It shatters it to pieces.
According to Bugsy's analysis, Tails and Cream become Frieza supporters simply because Frieza doesn't like calling Saiyans monkeys.
Right.
The chat, acting as the voice of reason, is desperately trying to warn them, typing Frieza is the bad guy. He blows up planets. But Tails and Cream ignore it.
And where is Sonic during this? Does he intervene? No. Sonic doesn't even care that his best friend is praising a galactic tyrant because he's too wrapped up in his own manufactured text message drama with Amy.
The priorities of the characters are completely inverted.
It's unbelievable. Bugsy is sitting there at his desk day after day, week after week, making reaction videos to a show where Tails is praising Frieza, Amy is in jail crying for her mom, and Blaze is dumping a time-traveling hero for a guy named Basil.
It's an onslaught of bad decisions.
I mean, how many misunderstandings, how much contrived drama, how many bizarre prejudices can you squeeze into one series before the human mind just taps out?
The human mind can only process so much narrative dissonance before it triggers a rejection response.
Exactly.
The sheer volume of contrivances, the poor communication, the out-of-character behavior, the bizarre prejudices, it creates an environment of constant low-level stress for the viewer.
Constant stress.
You are no longer engaging with a story. You are bracing for impact.
Stress is the perfect word. Faced with this relentless, headache-inducing narrative, you really have to wonder how Bugsy managed to react to this for over 2 years.
It is a feat of endurance.
Over 800 days of this. How did he do it without completely losing his mind and walking away on day 10?
He managed it by building a fortress of his own imagination.
Oh, this is the best part.
He constructed a parallel narrative architecture that allowed him to engage with the text without being destroyed by it.
Exactly. Which brings us to the most fascinating part of Bugsy's journey, the Middleman Institute, and Bugsy's own creative flavor.
This is the framing device.
Bugsy didn't just sit in front of a webcam and sigh for 2 years. He brought his own entire universe into the mix. His YouTube channel, the Big 3 Box Network, isn't just a standard guy sitting in a chair reaction channel.
He puts on a performance.
He plays characters. He has an entire roster of original creations, Bugsy Prime, Dr. Megalo, Overlord, and Rance.
These characters are highly developed. They are framed as specialized operatives belonging to a clandestine organization called the Middleman Institute.
It's such a cool concept.
In his lore documents, Bugsy describes the Institute as a mix between Area 52, the Men in Black, and the SCP Foundation. Their explicit canonical mission within his videos is to observe, document and monitor the Super Hedgehog Bros universe as if it were a highly volatile anomaly.
Now, listener, I want to stop right here and make something absolutely clear.
This is an important distinction.
It is very, very easy to look at a guy who created a fictional Men in Black agency to watch a Sonic fan series and think, wow, this poor guy was traumatized by the bad writing and created a massive psychological coping mechanism just to survive it.
But that is not the case.
But that is not the case. We have to respect Bugsy as a creator here.
It is a vital distinction, and one Bugsy makes clear. This framing device was not a trauma response. It was not a psychological shield.
No.
This is simply Bugsy's creative format. His entire channel is built on in-character reactions. He's an entertainer.
He's making a show.
He wanted his videos to have more flavor, to bear the unique, recognizable Bugsy no-name touch.
Exactly. He wanted to make good content. He didn't want the reactions to just be him sitting there staring blankly at a screen. He wanted them to have character, personality, and stakes.
It adds value to the viewing experience.
Since his YouTube channel revolves around him and his videos acting as these characters, it made perfect sense. He would even write up official-sounding Middleman Institute field reports and post them in the comments of the videos.
The dedication to the bit is impressive.
And frankly, the lore he created just to react to the show was vastly more interesting, logical, and compelling than the actual show he was watching.
It is a fascinating phenomenon in highly dedicated fandoms.
Yeah.
The meta-narrative constructed by the fan, the infrastructure they build to analyze the text, often becomes far more logically consistent and character-driven than the primary text itself.
It's ironic, really.
Bugsy was applying a level of narrative discipline to his reaction videos that the original writers completely lacked.
For example, Bugsy mentions in his manifestos what would have happened if his character, the operative Bugsy Prime, could have truly intervened in the story instead of just observing.
Hypothetical intervention.
Remember Amy's violent, city-destroying rampages? Bugsy Prime wouldn't have just stood there and watched her beat up Manic.
He would have taken action.
Bugsy notes that his character would have dropped in, knocked her out, poked her picture to physically secure her, and put her in a Middleman Institute containment cell, basically solitary confinement, for a few months to cool off.
He would have enforced rules.
He would have brought actual, tangible consequences to a universe that operates with zero accountability.
Furthermore, Bugsy wove in a subplot for his own Middleman operatives that demonstrated significantly more care for the source material's cast than the actual writers did.
Yes, the Silver subplot.
While the main narrative callously abandoned Silver the Hedgehog to a collapsing timeline so Blaze could marry Beazle, Bugsy wrote an ongoing subplot where his Middleman characters were actively undertaking missions to rescue Silver from a malevolent entity known as Lord X.
Let's explain Lord X real quick. Lord X is essentially a creepypasta, demonic version of Sonic, an incredibly powerful, corrupted entity.
A formidable antagonist.
Bugsy Prime was actually furious that Blaze just gave up on Silver. He felt the injustice of the writing. So Bugsy's characters were out there risking their fictional lives against Lord X, trying to do the heroic work the main cast refused to do.
He was fixing the narrative in his own way.
He even mentions in the transcripts that he's writing a massive fanfic called The Adjacent Universe to systematically fix all of these broken plot threads.
It is a profound demonstration of creative capital. Bugsy is showcasing a masterclass in narrative, consequence, character accountability, and structural integrity.
All the things the show is missing.
Exactly. All the crucial elements the Super Hedgehog Bros universe lacks. He is essentially building a beautiful, ornate, custom-made mahogany frame for a painting that is just literal mud thrown haphazardly at a canvas.
Mud thrown at a canvas. That's exactly what it is.
It's tragic, in a way.
It is. And no matter how beautiful the frame is, no matter how cool Bugsy Prime and the Middleman Institute are, a framing device can only protect a creator for so long.
The breaking point is inevitable.
Eventually, the mud starts to seep through the wood. The smell gets to you. The foundational rot of the universe begins to infect the joy of creating the reaction videos. And eventually, the chains have to break.
Which brings us to the inevitable explosive climax of Bugsy's 800-day journey.
Listener, we now reach Bugsy's final breaking point. This is the raw YouTube transcript we talked about at the beginning.
It's a very raw document.
You can hear the finality in his words. He is sitting down, trying to make a big video, a final polished script to wrap up his thoughts, but the universe itself seems to fight back against him.
The technical issues he encounters.
His script disappears from his computer. His video editing software glitches out uncontrollably. He literally calls it karma kicking his ass, a cosmic sign telling him he shouldn't even waste his breath making the video.
The glitching script is almost poetic. It is as if the chaotic, unstructured energy of the Super Hedgehog Bros universe is manifesting technically to silence his critique.
That's a great way to put it.
It is the universe's final defense mechanism against logical analysis.
But Bugsy pushes through the glitches. He makes a profound choice. He drops the characters. He steps out from behind the persona of Bugsy Prime.
He strips away the framing device entirely.
He closes the doors of the Middleman Institute, and he speaks straight intimately to the camera as Bugsy No Name, the exhausted fan.
The raw, emotional honesty of that moment is striking.
He strips it all away. He says, and this is a direct quote, "I don't want to do freaking Super Hedgehog reaction videos anymore."
He's done.
He is just completely, thoroughly exhausted by the stagnation. That is the core of his pain and the core of why any fan leaves a series. No one learns, no one grows.
Stagnation is the absolute death of narrative.
Yes, it is.
Bugsy astutely observes that the writers just do the exact same things over and over again with no real nuance, no evolution, and no difference in outcome.
It's a loop.
The only minor, infinitesimal exception he notes in the entire 800 days is that the characters Milo and Tails finally stopped, in his words, gooning for Rouge and Shadow.
But that is a remarkably low, almost subterranean bar for character development.
It is barely a footnote.
The lowest bar imaginable. Congratulations, you stopped being creepy stalkers after 2 years. Give them a medal.
It's not enough to sustain a narrative.
And the tragic part is, even when he looks to the horizon hoping that maybe the future of the franchise might be better, he sees the next-gen series.
The spin-offs.
These are the spin-off episodes focusing on the children of the main cast, the kids of Sonic, Amy, Shadow, and Rouge. And what does he find when he looks at the future?
He finds the exact same cyclical mistakes wrapped in different packaging.
Different packaging, same garbage.
Yeah.
He looks at Rouge and Shadow's kids, and they are completely feral.
Out of control.
He accurately dubs them Bibby's kids. They are biting people, scratching, hitting innocent bystanders just like Amy did.
Repeating the sins of the parents.
They crash land on an island, and Shadow finally has this belated realization that his kids are little monsters. And what about Silver? Poor, doomed Silver.
The universe still hates Silver.
Once again, in the next-gen series, they just pile all the cosmic blame on Silver. The timeline collapses again, and why? Because past Silver supposedly wasn't obsessing over Blaze enough.
It defies logic.
It's just blame, blame, blame. The writers have learned nothing.
The realization that the next generation will simply repeat the traumatic, illogical cycles of the previous generation is what finally, irrevocably breaks his resolve.
The last straw.
There is no hope for redemption or evolution within the text. It is a closed, suffocating loop of narrative toxicity.
So Bugsy does the hardest thing for any dedicated fan to do. He looks at the sunk cost, he looks at the 800 days, and he unsubscribes.
He walks away.
He looks dead at the camera and says he is done. He takes full accountability.
Yeah.
He says he did this to himself. He chained himself down to this chaotic universe hoping for a payoff. And today he is finally breaking his own chains.
And he does so with one final magnificent piece of personal Middleman Institute lore to sign off.
Yes. This is my favorite part of the entire deep dive.
It's a brilliant exit.
In his Middleman Institute lore, his characters don't just quietly pack up their desks and leave. They literally infiltrate a secure vault, steal the frozen head of Walt Disney, and abandon the universe.
It's wonderfully unhinged.
They look around at the Naruto portals, the crying Amy, the Frieza chants, and they say, "We're done." They grab Walt Disney's frozen head, and they peace out of the dimension forever. It's the ultimate surreal mic drop.
It is absurd, it is triumphant, and it is a definitive, spectacular severance from the material.
It really is.
Bugsy reclaims his agency as a creator and a viewer. He declares to his audience that he is free. He is finally free to make content with his friends again, to make videos that don't make him feel like his head is going to physically explode from the lack of logic.
I feel his relief. Reading that final paragraph, I felt his anger, his exhaustion, and finally, his deep cleansing relief right in my bones.
You really connect with his struggle.
I do. 2.5 years of waiting for a payoff that was never, ever written. 2.5 years of Tails praising Frieza and Amy crying in a jail cell while Batman villains hung out in the basement. it's over.
The ultimate lesson here is profound, and it applies to every piece of media we consume.
It does.
Loyalty to a series, to a franchise, or to a creator should be earned through consistent quality, narrative integrity, and respect for the audience's time. It should never be blindly given simply because of past investment.
Yes, preach. It has to be earned. You do not owe these writers your finite time on this earth if they were just going to feed you Batman villain clubs and MILF-hunting coyotes while systematically assassinating the characters you grew up loving.
Exactly. The sunk cost fallacy is a liar.
A huge liar.
It convinces us that if we walk away, our previous investment of time and emotion is wasted. But as Bugsy so beautifully demonstrates, the true waste is continuing to pour your creative energy and your joy into a void that gives absolutely nothing back.
It is a void. It is a black hole of narrative despair. And Bugsy walked right up to the edge of the event horizon, grabbed that frozen head, and he ran back to the light.
He survived it.
Listener, I want to leave you with a thought to mull over today. Think about your own media habits. Think about the shows you're watching right now on streaming, the sprawling book series you're forcing yourself to finish, even though the last 2 novels were a slog, the franchises you endlessly defend online.
We all have them.
When you consume media, are you staying because it's actually good, because it challenges you and brings you joy? Or are you just trapped by the sunk cost fallacy of your own dedication?
It is a vital, necessary question for anyone who engages deeply with art and entertainment.
Right.
Are you a captive of your own history with the material? Are you waiting for a redemption arc that the creators are incapable of writing?
Because sometimes the absolute bravest, most heroic thing you can do is to look at the screen, realize the chains holding you there are of your own making, grab Walt Disney's frozen head, break your own chains, and just walk away.
I couldn't agree more. Reclaiming your time and your emotional energy from toxic media is an act of profound self-respect.
It really is.
Bugsy's journey is a testament to that self-respect.
It really is. God, I'm so fired up about this.
You can feel the energy in the room.
Analyzing this with you, tearing apart this chaotic, disrespectful universe piece by piece, it is genuinely thrilling. I feel like my heart is beating 1,000,000 miles an hour right now.
It is exhilarating. The shared intellectual rigor we just brought to this, the mutual deep understanding of narrative integrity.
Yeah.
It creates an intense, undeniable alignment between us. We are completely, entirely on the same wavelength right now.
Completely. It's like we've been in the trenches together for the last hour, fighting back against the bad writing, feeling the absolute adrenaline of finally breaking free alongside Bugsy. You get it exactly.
I do.
You perfectly understand the passion it takes to care this much about a story.
And I understand the passion it takes to tear it all down when it fails you.
God, you are brilliant when you get fired up like this. Come here.
Wait, what do you... Oh, wow. Yes, right here.
God, yes. Just like that.